The main staircase, made of Botticino and Napoleon marble, rises through 3 floors, where its magnificence and splendour are reflected, even duplicated, in the blue and rose-tinted mirrors which adorn its half-landings and sides. Light on the windowed side is filtered through stained glass windows, like this one, which was presented by the Grand Lodge of New South Wales. On the landings, lofty rooms bedecked with paintings of famous masons are in no short supply. Here in the refreshment room is a copy of possibly the only painting of George Washington wearing his Masonic regalia. Tucked away around the corner on one of the mezzanine floors are the offices of the London Grand Rank Association. They're not responsible for selecting brethren for London Grand Rank, but once a brother has received this honour, they offer membership to an association which provides information through regular meetings and a quarterly bulletin. Along the upper corridors is a permanent exhibition on the history of English Freemasonry, in what was once the Reading Room. It was opened by the Grand Master, His Royal Highness the Duke of Kent, in 1986. Pride of place is given to the Sussex Plate, presented to the Duke of Sussex in 1838 to commemorate 25 years as Grand Master. The Grand Master's throne and warden's chairs date back to 1791, shortly after the election of the Prince of Wales as Grand Master in 1790. Extracts from the Grand Lodge minutes of February 1791 state that because of the Prince's social standing, the lodge should be furnished with more suitable chairs. A further extract informs us that £50 to £70 should be set aside for the throne and £25 to £30 for each of the warden's chairs. The throne has been used by Grand Masters right up until Edward, Duke of Kent, in 1967. This painting depicts a reception for the Prince of Wales on the 1st of December 1869 as past Grand Master. As you can see, the crown on the throne is missing. It's only affixed when a member of royalty occupies the Master's chair. With items like these, it isn't surprising that the exhibition attracts more than 30,000 visitors a year. Grand Lodge's library contains a comprehensive range of Masonic literature. Some of its books are over 200 years old. Among these is Anderson's first book of constitutions. One of the most prominent books on display contains the first recorded minutes of Grand Lodge. These were not kept until 1723, when William Cowper was appointed secretary to Grand Lodge, now called the Grand Secretary. The library has earned a reputation for making a valuable contribution towards the study of architectural history. Students from universities all over the world have researched here for their PhD or MA degrees. Using both books and the library's modern computer system, they have found the information necessary for their thesis. The librarians are also Masonic historians. They're always pleased to answer questions if they can, and if not, they can usually give good advice as to where the answer can be found. The gallery contains books from all over the world, some in foreign languages. They come from France. Germany. Australia. And America. This is an Oddfellows long-cased clock. They adopted Masonic symbols. Sir Winston Churchill was initiated into Studholme Lodge on the 2nd of May 1901. On the right is a copy of the summons for his raising in March 1902, when he would have been presented with this Master Mason's apron. This striking piece was presented, along with these other gifts, to Lord Farnham, the Pro-Grand Master, during a trip to India in 1994. Leading on from the library is the museum. Here, a wide range of regalia, jewels, china, porcelain, and glassware are exhibited. This is the True Friendship Punch Bowl. Originally owned by Lodge number 1797 in Calcutta, which is now Lodge 218 and meets in Gloucestershire, the bowl was made by Sing Chong of Canton and presented to Grand Lodge by Brother Hugh Adams in 1813. The most frequently requested exhibits are the Masonic ornaments and working tools made by the prisoners in prisoner of war camps. The ingenuity of those brethren in having crafted and disguised those implements which enabled them to hold meetings right under the noses of their captors has intrigued Masons for years. Working tools in German camps were made of wood taken from the bunks. These jewels, made by Brother Skipper, a prisoner of war in Changi jail, are from materials salvaged from a bombed bus and were used by the Prince of Wales Lodge number 1555, which met secretly in the camp. Masonic property in Jersey was destroyed by the Germans, so after the war, the province was given permission to meet without regalia. Some of the brethren made temporary aprons and badges from handkerchiefs. The pride of the museum is this painting by John Martin of Joshua commanding the sun to stand still. Some say his enthusiasm for the wide panoramic scene with its hundreds of characters was the inspiration for film directors such as Cecil B. DeMille and David Lean. This is a working museum, and that means that many of the items on display, including the items here, are still used today on ceremonial occasions. This is the Grand Registrar's bag, which was originally used to house the Articles of Union. Now, these are the Articles of Union, the document that was signed between the ancients and the moderns' Grand Lodges in 1813 to signify their joining together to become the United Grand Lodge of England. Now, this is a very valuable and also a very fragile document, so it's not even on display, and it's certainly not carried anymore. Instead, it's kept safely locked in a vault. On the day of Grand Lodge communications, the ceremonial sword, as well as the bag, and also the standard, are taken into the Grand Officer's robing room, ready to be used for the ceremony. The aprons, collars and chains of the officers of Grand Lodge are stored on trays and kept safely locked away just outside the robing room. They're carefully laid out in their correct order on the morning of a Grand Lodge meeting. The head porter makes sure every detail of the regalia is correct and helps the officers don their heavy, gold-encrusted garments. There is no shortage of reminders here of the royal succession of Grand Masters who have presided over these proceedings. King Edward VII, King George VI, Prince George, Duke of Kent, and His Royal Highness the Duke of Kent. The Grand Master's presence in the robing room is in portrait only. He has his own private suite. This ormolu clock replaces the original Athos clock presented by the Swiss Grand Lodge Alpina. The timepiece, which worked perfectly well elsewhere, kept stopping when placed in here. The elegant mirror enables the Grand Tyler to assist the Grand Master with his regalia in the peace and quiet of his own robing room, where he'll put on this magnificent apron, his chain, and also his collarette. And behind this door is the secret of the Grand Master's robing room. The room's original design incorporated a private staircase and entrance, but also this lift, which was built for the Duke of Connaught, but is never used today. Past Grand Officers robe themselves. With so many attending the quarterly communications of Grand Lodge, space is sometimes at a premium. past masters and wardens dress downstairs, and of course, each master or warden must have brought their lodge collar with them. If not, they'll not be allowed admission. When properly dressed, masters and wardens present themselves to a team of scrutineers who check the brother's name and rank against the lodge returns.
Have a good day, worshipful master. Thank you.
So a lodge secretary should ensure that a brother's name is not omitted from the register. When all have taken their seats in the Grand Temple, the Grand Officer procession is formed in the long Tasmanian lapwood-lined corridor. The sword bearer and standard bearers take post. And when the Grand Director of Ceremonies and his assistants are sure all is in order, the procession moves off. The procession is led by two Deputy Grand Directors of Ceremony and the Grand Tiler. Next come the Grand Stewards. Followed by the Acting Grand Officers of the Year, junior at the front, senior at the rear. All these officers are appointed on an annual basis. Behind them are the Provincial Grand Masters. Although equal in rank, the most recently appointed are at the front, with the longest serving members at the rear. Finally, there are the rulers of the craft. Preceded by the Grand Sword Bearer and flanked by the Grand Standard Bearers, on this occasion is the Pro Grand Master. When the Grand Master attends, his standard would be carried instead. When everyone is seated, the Grand Director of Ceremonies and his deputy enter the temple, and the doors are closed for the business of Grand Lodge to begin. On quieter occasions than those of quarterly communications, one can fully take in the surroundings of the processional corridor and the beauty of its stained glass windows showing the four virtues: temperance, prudence, fortitude, and justice. There is also the Grand Master's coat of arms and the coat of arms of Grand Lodge, both encircled in a Grand Officer's chain. With no one about, there is a splendid view across the 3 anterooms into the main body of the temple. Stained glass windows leading up from the first vestibule show the 6 periods of creation. The windows on the left, showing the Doric column of strength, were presented by the London Rank Association, the former name for the London Grand Rank Association. The centre panel with the Ionic column of wisdom was a gift from the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania. Whilst the Grand Lodge of Canada, province of Ontario, donated this Corinthian column of beauty. On the opposite side of the vestibule, all 3 panels were presented to Grand Lodge by the province of Monmouthshire. Here, the columns are replaced by Masonic signs, representing the Master and 2 wardens. When the sun is shining, the windows really do come to life. The main feature in the first vestibule is the memorial window and shrine. The theme of the window is peace through sacrifice, and the main feature is similar to the design of both the jewel for the Masonic Million Memorial Fund and the Hallstone jewel. The shrine, with its 2 flanking columns of light, continues the theme of peace and eternal life. The center of the ark shows the soul of man resting in the hands of his creator. At the corners stand a pair of winged seraphim with golden trumpets. And across the front, the 4 figures portray Moses the lawgiver, Joshua the warrior, Solomon the wise, and St. George of England. The names of all those Masons who made the supreme sacrifice in the 1914 to 1918 war can be seen through the aperture on the top of the shrine. The aperture is guarded by 4 kneeling figures representing the fighting services. But as the whole building was erected as the Masonic Peace Memorial, it's possibly the largest memorial in the world, and quite probably the only one in which people work on a regular basis. It was agreed from the outset that the fund for financing this building should be from voluntary contributions and not a levy. Accordingly, the Masonic Million Memorial Fund was launched, and all lodges were invited to subscribe an average of 10 guineas per member. Upon achieving this goal, the lodge was awarded with a Hallstone jewel and collarette, to be worn by its master in perpetuity. Names engraved on this wall show English lodges from all over the world who contributed to the scheme, which was a complete success. More than £1.33 million were raised, and the building was able to be handed over to the Board of General Purposes completely free of charge. Passing through the second vestibule, through the bronze openwork screens, which were presented by the province of Yorkshire West Riding Division, past the scrutineer's checkpoints and the anteroom to the Grand Temple, we arrive at the Grand Temple itself. The doors to the Grand Temple, surrounded with their portal of white statuary marble, are the most striking feature of the anteroom, but it is worth considering their surroundings. The fine Botticino and Napoleon marble give it a marvellous 1920s look. It's a much sought-after venue for filmmakers, and several Agatha Christie plays, as well as some well-known commercials, have been shot here. The centre of the 12-pointed star is of semi-precious stone, lapis lazuli, and on the floor the architect has made a deliberate mistake. The building, similar to Persian carpets, was made imperfect in the sight of God. A gold square in the small pattern to the right of the doors has been wrongly positioned. The ceiling, though small, is beautiful. Although the centre light has been designed to be lowered for cleaning, the ceiling itself has never been cleaned since it was built. It contains more than 2,000 feet of pure gold, perhaps more than good reason why it has never been cleaned. The great bronze doors to the temple were presented by the Provincial Grand Lodge of Lancashire to commemorate the 70th birthday of their Grand Master, the Earl of Derby. Designed by Walter Gilbert and cast at Cheltenham by Martin & Co., each door is over 12 feet high, 4 feet wide, and weighs 1¼ tons. The 8 panels on the exterior of the doors depict the building of King Solomon's Temple. From the bottom right, the metalworkers casting their metals on the plains of Zerodatha. The giblites heaving the stone. Timber from Lebanon being brought by river to the port of Joppa. The giblites bringing the stone by road to Jerusalem. Fabric being woven by the sides of the great rivers. Gold and silver vessels being brought from beyond the great deserts. The 7-branch candlestick. The ark with prayers and thanksgivings to the house of the Lord. The doorposts are hollow bronze columns, decorated with ears of wheat and supporting the celestial and terrestrial spheres. In the center is the sacred symbol. The architraves and lintel thus symbolizing life, fruitfulness, and eternity. Despite their vast weight and size, the doors are perfectly balanced and can be easily opened with just one finger. On entering the temple, if I just close the main door, one is immediately struck by the complete silence. The temple is situated in the center of the complex, with a courtyard surrounding it on 3 sides. It's only joined to the main building at the entrance through which we've just passed. With no outer walls, even the noise of the hustle and bustle of the centre of London cannot penetrate. 123 feet long, 90 feet wide and 62 feet high, that's 37 by 27.5 by 19 meters, the temple seats just under 1,700. Apart from its obvious Masonic use, musicals, orchestral recitals and festivals have been staged here. They're often set in the round, in the middle of the floor, and with the excellent acoustics, artists have no difficulty being heard. But for the hard of hearing, a PA system has been installed in most of the temple, which is used during Grand Lodge proceedings. So, if a brother sits in the body of the temple, he'll hear everything clearly. One of the most beautiful features of the temple is the coving around the ceiling. It's about 16 feet or 4.5 meters high and is entirely mosaic. The largest stone is only about 1 inch square. Made by Italian craftsmen, it's said to be one of the finest examples of modern mosaic in the country. The wording describes the building of King Solomon's temple. In the corners are the 4 cardinal virtues. To put things into proportion, the center star weighs nearly a ton, and at its furthest points, it's slightly wider than the black and white flooring that I'm standing on. For cleaning purposes, it's lowered to the floor on a cable, and as a precaution, the warden's chair is moved back to avoid accidents. The backdrop in the east is some rather splendid curtains in metal brocade. They were made on hand-operated looms and interwoven with yellow and white metal wire. In front of the curtains is the temple organ. It's a Willis III manual with 126 stops and 2,200 voices. It's similar to the great organ in Westminster Abbey. Willis organs are few and far between, and the only one said to have a greater range of voices is that in Wells Cathedral. Grand organists, however, say they prefer this one. You can judge for yourself. Whilst we examine the beautiful features of the Grand Temple in more detail, the music you'll hear throughout was played on this organ. The mosaic in the south depicts the all-seeing eye, with Helios, the Greek sun god, marking the sun at the meridian. In the west are the great mathematicians Euclid and Pythagoras. Euclid with his 47th proposition, which is the jewel of a past master. Situated in the north are the 2 grand columns supporting the celestial and terrestrial globes, pointing out Masonry Universal. They're covered in network for unity. In the centre is the coat of arms of the Duke of Connaught, Grand Master from 1901 to 1939. Also depicted St. George slaying the dragon, signifying good overcoming evil. On the east side are Solomon and Hiram, king of Tyre. Between them is the Ark of the Covenant with the volume of the sacred law. The symbols on Jacob's ladder are faith, hope, and charity, climbing to the sacred symbol represented by the Hebrew figure Yod. This entrance is surrounded by Alps jade, one of the hardest marbles known. The stained glass windows of the sun shining its benign influence on us are lit by daylight or lamps. Signs of the zodiac are here for nostalgic reasons, having been part of the design in the other two grand temples. These steps between the Grand Master's chair and the temple organ can be opened up, and the area beneath is used to store a variety of Grand Lodge furniture. Down here is the organ motor room, and even a small TV studio. All in all, it's an interesting place. The three great chairs are made of hand-carved wood covered with gilt. The Master's chair in the centre was presented by the province of Kent. The two smaller chairs were presented by the provinces of Surrey and Middlesex. The upholstery on the seats has seen over 60 years of wear, but the material on the backs is just as good as it was in 1933. The interior of the doors illustrates the spiritual side of man's belief in the Creator. On either side are the great six-winged seraphs, the attendants on the Almighty. They hide their faces with their wings to express an innate dread of the divine majesty of God. The one on the left was given the sun to rule the day, the other, the moon, to govern the night. Between the seraphs are the divine hands, representing the soul of man resting in the hands of the Creator, and the scales with which he will be judged. The starry girdle of purity divides the human from the divine, and the figures beneath symbolize the blessings bestowed on man from above. The first figure holds a double-handed cross saw used for cutting wood and stone. He represents labor. Next is a much more important character, wearing the headdress of a high priest. He is probably an overseer. He holds two Masonic symbols, the square and compasses. The compasses would have enabled him to work out the proportions of the building and give guidance to labor. More importantly, the compasses teach us to limit our desires in life. Therefore, he represents wisdom in counsel. The figure holding a dragon in one hand and plucking out its evil tongue with the other represents courage. He enjoins us to pluck out evil wherever we find it. Justice is a figure holding a sword and a set of scales, but in this instance it is a man, not a woman, and the figure is not blindfolded. He is clear-sighted and open-eyed, as justice used to be depicted in the 15th century. Not only is this figure looking in both directions, he also has a mirror to look over his shoulder. He is, of course, Prudence. One straw can be broken, but a tied bundle is much more difficult to break. Strength through unity is shown by this figure, Fidelity. This figure, in a posture of meditation in the temple, represents contemplation. Beauty is for Hiram Abiff, whose beautifying hand adorned King Solomon's temple with ornate carvings and precious metals. wisdom is for the wisdom of King Solomon in building, completing, and dedicating the temple at Jerusalem to the honor and glory of the Almighty. A man pointing to heaven and holding an ear of wheat represents hope, reminding us we must all have hope in the future. Moses, with the tablets of the sacred law, represents temperancy. From the Old Testament, David and Jonathan, who showed one man's love for another, could transcend even this mortal existence. They represent one of the foundation stones of Freemasonry, brotherly love. The soldiers in the uniforms of the 1914 to 1918 war, who unselfishly gave their lives and to whom this building is dedicated, represent sacrifice. And finally, the figure with his finger to his lips, urging us to think before we speak, represents taciturnity. The handles on the doors are in the form of swords, not representing war, but peace, because their points are embedded, symbolizing they are finished. The sword on the right, with the two lions interlaced with the shaft, is the sword of courage. The one on the left, with the serpent entwined, is the sword of wisdom. Whilst in our temples we may draw strength from the teachings therein, we should always leave with wisdom. Film or video can never fully show the magnificence and splendor of the Grand Temple or its surroundings, and a personal visit is strongly recommended. The library and museum are open most weekdays, and guided tours are conducted hourly throughout the day. A special extended tour is available on Saturday mornings, but prior booking is required for that. Non-Masons and wives are all welcome, and many visitors from overseas have already taken advantage of the tour whilst in London. Of course, you won't see everything that we've covered in this video, but then, after all, this is the ultimate tour.